Welcome to 412 Sports Talk, the number one podcast for Pittsburgh sports. Steelers, we talk it. Penguins, we talk it. Pirates, yeah, we talk it. With the biggest guests.
Bob Pompiani, Pittsburgh legend. Mayor Bill Peduto, the mayor of the city of Pittsburgh, is on with us. Doran Dickerson, West Allegheny legend.
Trey Essex, welcome.
Available on iTunes and Spotify. Hosted by Mad Chad Nolan.
It over too much. Well, now he's not turning it over at all.
And Eddie Provident.
We've got the best team in football.
And now, 412 Sports Talk.
All right, well, welcome back, Yinzers, to another episode of the 412 Sports Talk podcast, brought to you, as always, by MCM Studios. I'm your host, Eddie Provident, and as always, with me is my man, Mad Chad. Mad Chad, what's going on in Mad Chad's world today, brother?
Not to get political, but doesn't today just feel like a fresh start?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Like a fresh start. It doesn't, because you know me, I'm not like diehard either way. I'm not a diehard liberal. I'm not a diehard Republican, but I just feel this sense of normalcy for a while. And it'd be nice to like just be able to talk about sports without, like, how many podcasts have we done where we're like, hey, we're going to try to talk about sports, but like people are trying to like siege the Capitol right now. So there's more important things going on. How about this, like a normal week, a normal work week for everybody where like, yeah, the biggest problem we have is like the Penguins injury or COVID. Like, well, I guess nice. COVID's not normal either, but
yeah, it'll be nice, man. It'll be nice. It'll be nice. Yeah. We got a lot to cover today. We've got an excellent guest on this week's episode. We've got a conversation with Charting Hockey's own Sean Tierney. Sean Tierney, also of the Hamilton Bulldogs of the OHL. So we're going to talk some puck with him, and let me tell you, we recorded that last night, and let me tell you how great of a conversation that is. So stick around for that one. It's about 35 minutes long. Just great hockey talk, Penguins, and just general NHL stuff.
I think even he was surprised about how good it was.
yeah, it was a good time, man, and he's such a great dude, and you know, we'll get into more of that later on in the show. But I kind of want to get off script for us, at least. You know, we don't really normally we're football and hockey. But with football for the Steelers being over, and we've got a couple of like housekeeping things to talk about with the NFL, and we'll get to that too. But I kind of want to hit the pause button, and I want to talk some baseball, man. The Pirates made some news this week, and they traded Joe Musgrove. And on the surface, I see a lot of people ripping the Pirates for this Joe Musgrove trade. And look, I get it. I absolutely get it. It's just another example on the surface of the Pirates trading away a proven MLB player for a bunch of prospects. But I think you have to look at this and separate it from what the Neil Huntington era was and what the Ben Cherington era is going to be. I actually like what Ben Cherington is doing. There was, you know, people were calling this a rebuild, and I don't want to steal our main man Dejan Kovačević's thunder, because he was the first one I saw to have this take. But I agree with it wholeheartedly. This isn't a rebuild. This is a teardown of what was there and building something new. There wasn't much there to begin with. The cabinets were pretty bare. And Ben Cherington did not have a lot to work with. So he's just ripping everything down to the studs and starting fresh. And I'm okay with that. I think that that's what needs to be done. And I think that this trade was a home run, no pun intended. Let's take a look at real quick what happened. So Joe Musgrove went to the Padres. Joe Lucchesi went to the Mets. And then the Pirates got 19-year-old center fielder Hudson Hitt. So the Pirates got some head from the Padres. Everybody's been making the joke. I had to throw it in there too, and I probably stole Chad's thunder. We also got catcher Endy Rodriguez, a 20-year-old switch-hitting catcher from the Mets. From the Mets organization. MLB Pipeline has him ranked as the Mets' 14th best prospect. David Bednar, a 26-year-old right-handed reliever, and he's a native of Mars, PA. He played high school at Mars, so a hometown boy coming back. And then left-hander Omar Cruz and another prospect right-handed pitcher Drake Fellows. So he was a starter at Vanderbilt. We've got some every one of those players were top 20s in their team, in their respective teams' prospect pool. So we did get some talent back for let's be honest, as much as I like Joe Musgrove, he was a middling, probably going to be a 3 starter for the Pirates at best, a 2 or 3. And that's when we have a bad rotation. Realistically, he's going to be the 4 or 5 starter for the Padres if you look at their rotation. So we got a lot for somebody who was kind of a middling starting pitcher. And that's, again, Joe Musgrove, by all accounts, is a great guy. He was an awesome addition to the city. And I think from that standpoint, yeah, he's going to be missed. But what this trade signifies to me is Ben Cherington acknowledging that he's just got to wipe everything out and start over. But here's where the problem is. This is where I stop my optimism. It doesn't matter what Ben Cherington does right now if Bob Nutting doesn't get behind him financially. If Bob Nutting doesn't get behind this team financially, and in 3 years, 2 or 3 years, when these prospects are fully developed, then it doesn't matter how good they are, because if they don't have the right pieces around them, the team's still going to suck. And I'll give you an example. In 2000, when the Pirates made their three playoff appearances, each one of those years they had chances to bring in free agents and go at the trade deadline and buy. And rather than doing that all the way and selling out, they kind of like just dipped their toes in the water, and it didn't work. We were eliminated in 2 of the wild card games, and then the divisional round the first time around. And that's exciting to know that, okay, well, we could have playoff baseball again. But look, in the city of Pittsburgh, if you're not winning championships, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And I'm frustrated that the Pirates are always graded on this curve where we expect the Penguins to win Stanley Cups, we expect the Steelers to win Super Bowls, but if the Pirates just break 500, everybody's excited. And that's because of ownership. Okay, so if Ben Cherington can make every right move in the draft and every right move in trades as far as bringing in talent and bringing in prospects, but if the organization doesn't develop them and the organization doesn't put money up when they develop, it doesn't matter, and we're in the same boat.
Yeah, totally agree. People know me as a Pirates hater, which is the funny thing about that is if you go back to 2012, 2011, 2013, 14, I was at probably more Pirates games than some of these like diehard Pirates fans. I was down there every night during the summer. I've made like lifelong friends. They call them the left field crew. Shout out to Angry Fan, Nikki, Sports Mel, all of them. I was down there with those guys, night in, night out, cheering on the Bucks, getting a little toasty as well, obviously. But I supported the team, especially financially. It takes I don't know if some people realize how much effort and financial effort it takes to, on a work day, like a Tuesday night, go down to the city of Pittsburgh on the North Shore, pay for parking, pay for food, pay for drinks, pay for your ticket. And if you have kids or whatever, people put hours of time and financial effort into being a fan. The reason I got off the train was, I'm the same way with the Steelers and Penguins. If I feel like you're not giving the proper effort to try to compete, well, why the hell should I give that kind of an effort? Why am I going to waste my time and my money to go support your franchise if you're not trying to win? Right now, golf claps for Ben Cherington and the Pirates. That was the right move, and so far, so good. I don't know what else people want to say. I mean, I called out DK because he was like being pompous about, oh, look, the Pirates did this. I can't wait to hear all the Bob Nutting haters. What do you mean? People have a right to be pessimistic and hold caution when it comes to the Pittsburgh Pirates. They have every right. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Okay, so let's say for a second that Ben Cherington continues this. He has a very organized, concise plan. He's going to build this roster the way he wants it, with guys that he wants and players he believes in. And we start getting, guys that actually replace Garrett Cole, Andrew McCutchen, and the players that they had the core players they had, and they start progressing in 3 years from now, right? Okay, so then we first have to get to that part, because just because he made this trade, and even if he makes another good trade or another good signing, doesn't mean that. Let's get to that part first. That's part A. Part B is, okay, let's say they build themselves back up 3 years from now. We start going, hey, look, this guy's panned out, this guy's panned out, this guy's panned out. And now Sports Illustrated and all these outlets are saying, hey, the Pirates, they're back. They might win 84, 85 games next year. Let's say they do. Then at that point, are you going to go all in, right? Are you going to go all in? The way the baseball, and listen, I understand. I can't ask Bob Nutting and the Pirates to spend $150 million. I don't think anyone is asking them to do that. That's insane. What we are asking for is, A, have a plan. So far, it looks like they do. B, if the plan does succeed, because that's a crapshoot. All these prospects, you have no idea. But if it does succeed, will they then just sprinkle a little bit of money here and there to get a starting pitcher, to get a relief pitcher, to get maybe a utility guy that can give them the depth that they need and that they lacked what they should have did. So yeah, sorry if I'm not like getting my, I'm back and typing bucking and getting ready to head down to PNC Park with cheering them on. I'm playing the cautious game. Also, I want transparency, because when I really got burned, and I still remember it. I still remember driving in the car, listening to 93.7 The Fan and listening to Neil Huntington in 2017 or 2018, one of those 2 years, 2017, right, when they traded Garrett Cole and Andrew McCutchen.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is right after they traded Garrett Cole, and he said, they were like, oh, is this a rebuild? And he was like, oh no, we still plan on competing for the World Series. Kiss my ass. I'm sorry.
We know that's not true. Yeah.
We know that's not true. So why even try to insult my intelligence? Right? I always say I hate the New York Rangers, but props to them, because what they did a few years ago was they sent out a mass letter and email chain to all their season ticket holders saying, hey guys, I'm gonna let you know right now, we don't feel like we have a cup team. They had some big names on their roster, and they said, hey, we're going to trade these guys. You're going to see this guy go for second round pick, this guy go for a first round pick. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get all these first round picks. Now, look, they just got Alexis Lafreniere, they've had a top 5 pick the last couple of years, and everybody's starting to say, hey, look, the Rangers are probably going to be really good.
Benajad, they've got some good young goalies.
Right.
Yeah, they're starting to put a good team together. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine, but the biggest part was they let their fans know what was going on, so that the fans could adjust their emotional expectations accordingly. If I know, hey, we're going to suck next year, but there's light at the end of the tunnel, then it's actually could become kind of fun, because then you're going, okay, I know we're not going to win shit this year, but we can watch and see which one of these guys really start to pan out. And maybe that's what you look for as a fan.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. It's like the way I described it on Twitter was, it's not only are we looking at them having to build from the ground up when it comes to the actual organization and the product on the field, but they have to build the trust of the fan base from the ground up again too. So for them to say, oh, hey, listen, trust us. No, I can't trust you yet.
Right.
I have to wait and see what happens. And look, I'm going to here's a snapshot of what in 3 years, what it could look like for the Pirates. Let's just look at their pitching rotation. They could have Kumar Rocker, who will probably be the first overall pick of this draft. And he is a stud, man. Like, he is, to me, he's the best pitching prospect since that we've seen since Steven Strasburg that was drafted by the Nationals. So you've got Kumar Rocker coming through the pipeline if they draft him, which they should. Then you've got Quinn Priester in the pipeline right now. He's already a developing prospect for the Pirates, and he was named to Baseball America's top 50. You've got Mitch Keller, who's already seen some MLB game time, and he looks like he's going to be the real deal. And then you have Jamison Talion, who, if they hold on to him, could be a very nice piece for that pitching staff. That's 4 pitchers, though. You need 5 or 6 in today's MLB. So in 3 years, we could have a really solid 3 or 4 starting pitchers. Will they add a couple through free agency? Will they trade for a couple? Will they pony up $10-15 million a year per pitcher to fill out that rotation? If they do that, And then you add in Ke'Bryan Hayes, and you add in Cole Tucker, and you add in Brian Reynolds, and you add in some of these guys that we have, and maybe this catcher, this Endy Rodriguez that they got through this trade. Now all of a sudden you're looking like, oh man, this is a decent baseball team that can compete for the playoffs. If they add a couple more pieces through free agency, if they can get their payroll around the 110 to 120, 110 to 120 million for a season with a bunch of young guys, I think that they can compete. And if you look at the Astros before they started buying up like crazy, they stunk. They completely wiped out everything. If you look at the Tampa Bay Rays, they stunk. They wiped out everything, and they built through the draft and through trading away big-name players and getting in prospects. That is how you have to do it in baseball, in Major League Baseball, because there's not a salary cap. If you're a small market team, you have to build through the draft. You have to build through building your prospect pool. And one little thing I want to mention here, the Pirates are starting to put a little bit more money into their international prospects, and that's a good sign too. So I see some things happening that I'm excited about, but I can't go 100% gung-ho and say, man, the Pirates are back until I see Bob Nutting pony up the money that needs to be ponied up. And that's just where I'm at with it right now, Chad.
And to just finish this off, so the thing that really bugged me, again, because I don't know where this pompous attitude comes from. I know that there's people in this town that they're Pirates. You know how there's always weird. There's Penguins people first, and I probably fall in that category. Then there's Steelers people first, then there's Pirates fans first. For some reason, there's like these little rivalries that go on, especially on social media when it comes to these teams. You'll see like someone with a Pirates logo take a shot at the Penguins. It's really odd. I actually want all three teams to do well, and I think we've been very objective when it comes to all three teams. I mean, hell, I called out the Penguins for all kind of stuff off the ice this just these last couple podcasts. So I feel like I call it like it is. So, but like, I just don't understand where people think that there's not a justification for so many people to be cautiously pessimistic when it comes to this, because that's what they deserve. They deserve for everyone to say, okay, show me.
Yep, that's it. And they have to show. And so we'll see. Time will tell. This year, I'm just warning Pirates fans, if you think this rebuild is going to be an overnight thing, you're in for a lot of pain. Brace yourselves this year, because this team this year is not going to be a good baseball team. They don't have a lot right now. They have a couple of good young guys, but outside of that, it's going to be a tough season. They don't have much of a pitching staff. There's a lot of growing to do. So this is not the year that I expect them to compete, and I don't even know that next year is the year that I expect them to fully compete. But time will tell what happens, and we'll see. Look, like Chad said, we're both big Pirates fans. We might be frustrated with the team, but we both love the team. So hopefully they pull it together and they put a good product on the field so that this city can be excited about baseball again. One thing's for certain, Chad, that wild card game against the Cincinnati Reds was one of the coolest things that I've ever seen on TV, and I'm sure the people were down there would confirm that the atmosphere was amazing. So this city loves baseball and is hungry for a competitor. We'll see what happens, and we'll hopefully that comes to be. Another thing that I want to talk about, I actually want to bring so I used to have a podcast with my man, Matt Casnell from Philadelphia. We had the Keystone Coast to Coast podcast, and actually Chad he was actually on it to talk some hockey when the Pens played the Flyers in the playoffs one year. But we had a thing on there. The Jagoff of the Week was one of the regular segments that we would do. And I kind of want to bring that back this episode on the 412 Sports Talk podcast. I want to bring back the Jagoff of the Week because I think that everybody knows where I'm going with this. Now, before I say who the Jagoff of the Week is, you'll notice that I'm wearing a Pittsburgh Clothing Company hat and a Pittsburgh Clothing Company hoodie, the Latang Cult hoodie. If you don't have it already, Go check their website out. Check them out on Twitter. They don't sponsor the show, but I love those guys. Get a Letang Cult hoodie. Get something from them. Support your local businesses. The guys are awesome. They actually do support the show. We've done some giveaways with them, and we plan on doing some giveaways again with them and teaming up with them. So they always retweet us. They always help us out.
The show they share the show links all the time.
They're definitely friends of the show. So give them some love. But this week on Twitter, they got into a little bit of a Twitter war with local Twitter. I don't even know if you would call him. We'll just call him an annoyance. I don't really think he deserves to be called anything other than that. Local Twitter gnat, annoyance, mosquito, Penguins Chronicles. For those of you who don't know, Penguins Chronicles is the self-proclaimed greatest Pittsburgh Penguins history account on the internet, the greatest Pittsburgh Penguins history account website. So, and again, this is all self-proclaimed. One of the things that they like to do is rip on Chris Letang and any of Chris Letang's followers, and just be and look, I'm a pastor. I don't use this language often, but it's the only way I could describe it. They just like to be a general dick on Twitter. I have watched him in the last week take shots at Taylor. Is it Hayes for DK on Pittsburgh Sports?
Yep.
Taylor is an incredible journalist. She is a great follow. If you don't follow her already on Twitter, she is very knowledgeable when it comes to the game of hockey, sports in general. She's just a great follow. Took shots at her credibility. Completely destroyed the mentions of Pittsburgh Clothing Company and tried to tear them down, which just blew up in his face, and it ended up being one of Pittsburgh Clothing Company's most successful days as far as sales go, because everybody on Pittsburgh Twitter came to their defense and supported them, rightfully so. He was taking shots at other people, made fun of some people's wives, was calling some people's family members fat. I mean, like, the dude is just a terrible human being, and I really don't like getting personal when it comes to sports stuff on Twitter, but when you have somebody taking that many shots at that many people, he's a coward, he's a punk, he's a keyboard warrior, and I hope that he sees this, because I'm looking right at my camera right now and letting you know that I live at 538 Lytle Street in Pittsburgh, PA, down in Hazelwood. Anytime you want to come see me, you can come see me, because all you are is a Twitter punk. And I hate being the call-out guy. But, dude, I am so sick and tired of that dude taking shots at people that I care about, people that I follow on Twitter, that I've become friends with, and he's nothing but a punk.
Oh, for sure. So he said, when we got into it before, he said, I had a picture with me and my son always makes goofy, silly faces.
He's a little kid. Yeah.
Right. He's 2 years old. And he said that he said something about, no surprise, your kid has Down syndrome or something like that. He has me blocked on Twitter. Again, he's someone, these people, and you and I, we know each other, so it's easy for us to know what each other is about, because I had someone the other day was like, oh, this Kevin guy on Twitter was like, oh, you wouldn't do stuff. And I'm like, you should probably ask around, because if anything, I do too much, because I've gotten my ass beat plenty of times in my life, because I'm not afraid to fight. So, dude,
you and I, look, I've played on so many different deck hockey teams, and I've only almost fought a teammate once, and it was you over that game that I sucked in goal.
So I don't know where this thing comes where I'm not about backing my words up, because if anything, I'm too like I've had to calm down over the years, and my son's chilled me out. But yeah, he's a total coward. I really want any Pens fan listening to the show, do not follow this guy. He's not worth it. Listen, any one of us can go on there and say, this day in Pittsburgh Penguins history, Jaromir Jagr scored 4 goals. It's not worth it. It's not worth retweeting or following him. Not. Because he is not a good person. I mean, he is calling people's wives names. He was trying to defame somebody. He tried to dox somebody. He called my son. He said my son has Down syndrome, which is insane. He is not a good person, and he's a punk. If he ever went to a Pens game, I would love to get in his face and see what he's about. But guess what? He would call the cops. That's the kind of guy
that's the kind of dude he is. And like I said, I hate being the call-out, because I'm not a tough guy, man. I grew up in Hazelwood, and I was probably I was probably the dork of the neighborhood. I was not somebody that got into a lot of fights. I was not somebody that got into like all the tough stuff. I lived I was the square, I was a square. Like I didn't get into a lot of stuff, man. But when I see stuff like that, like my instinct is to defend people that I care about. And I had to get that off my chest this week because I mean, this dude is just nothing but bad news. He's not worth the follow. He's not worth, I mean, I can't even believe we're spending this much time on him because he's just not worth it. But I thought it would be a good time to support Pittsburgh Clothing Company. Again, a local business that deserves your support. Again, great people, great products. If you want to, I mean, like I even had a time where I bought a hoodie from them that didn't fit, and they took complete care of me. They gave me store credit to buy a new one and told me just to give the other one away. It was actually this hoodie I'm wearing right now. I got the wrong size, so I ended up getting this in a bigger size. I mean, they worked everything out, man. Like it was great. But again, it's just when you got people like that on Twitter, like Twitter to me is supposed to be something fun, and sports are supposed to be something fun. It's entertainment. It's for enjoyment. And then you have people like that their sole purpose is to like puff themselves up, make themselves look cool, and take away everyone else's enjoyment. And it's just kind of stupid. I mean, it's not kind of stupid. It is stupid. It's pathetic. It's just, it shows me what type of person you really are. And again, I'm sorry for getting a little hot under the collar and, like calling people out like that, especially, as somebody who's supposed to be a pastor and supposed to be a man of peace. But when someone takes shots and when someone hurts people that I care about, I take that personally. And, that dude, I mean, I don't even know what his real name is and I don't even care, but he doesn't deserve the time of day. And I'll leave it at that.
No, he deserves all the ridicule in the world. Like I said, just don't. The best thing to do, though, with this guy is just to block him, mute. I actually enjoy muting people more because I have more people muted than blocked. Blocking's kind of blocking for one. I like people to be able to see my stuff, and then if I don't like them, I mute them so that way they just scream into the void. Like they can see all my stuff, they can see the podcast links and all the retweets I get and stuff, and then they take personal shots of me, but I never see it because they're muted. So they literally just scream into the void to nobody. So highly suggest just muting his account because, again, he doesn't do anything special. The reason why he even has the followers he does is because he's had that account for so long. So 10 years ago, yeah, if you were on there and not everybody had the ability to just take their phone out and post a video to Twitter, because that wasn't always the case. You had to actually embed it and all that stuff. That's why he got the little following that he did, was because he would post these day in history Penguin. Listen, we all do that stuff. I'll jump on there randomly when I'm bored and go, wow, look at this. I remember this game. He's not worth it. Mute the account. He's a garbage person.
Yep. So look, we covered a lot of ground in this first segment, and I think we had a lot more that we were going to cover, but I definitely want to get to this interview that we had with Sean Tierney. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. We're going to take a quick ad spot for our sponsor, MCM Studios. And then when we come back on the other side of this, we'll have a full interview with Sean Tierney of Charting Hockey. What's going on, 412 Sports Talk family? I'm sitting here in my living room with my main man, Talbot. Talbot, say what's up, buddy. For those of you who don't know, Talbot's named after Max Talbot because my wife and I had to compromise, we'll call it. She didn't want Lord Stanley or Gordy as a pet. But anyways, I'm sitting here in my living room and I just want to talk to you guys for a quick minute about MCM Studios, our sponsor. There's so many different reasons why people need a recording studio nowadays, especially with the pandemic. Everything's going virtual. And honestly, what sets you apart from everybody else is your audio quality and your video quality. And having somebody that knows their stuff help you out is what it's all about. And I'm telling you, Mike Hitt and the guys down at MCM Studios, they know their stuff and they know how to help people. And just for our listeners, right now, your first booking gets 15% off if you mention 412 Sports Talk or if you mention my name or Chad's name. So check them out, 412mcmstudios.com. Mention us, Chad, myself, or the podcast. Get 15% off and set yourself up to be a cut above everybody else when it comes to all of your virtual needs, all of your audio needs, all your video needs. Take care, guys. well, welcome back, everybody, to the 412 Sports Talk podcast, brought to you by MCM Studios. As always, I'm your host, Eddie Provident. With me is Mad Chad Nolan, and then our very special guest this week from the Hamilton Bulldogs of the OHL and chartinghockey.ca, the man, the myth, the legend, Sean Tierney. Sean, I'm so excited to have you on. Thanks for coming, bud.
Yeah, thanks for making time for me. You guys are getting some big guests. I'm just happy to be included in that list so far.
Well, right off the bat, what is going on with this Penguins team?
Like, the hardest question right off the hop here. The Penguins are a strange roster. When I was doing preseason projections for them, they kept showing out pretty well. And I was a little bit surprised because the roster is kind of hanging on a little bit to that last core that really, challenged for Stanley Cups for a few years in a row. But it's a roster that's starting to get older, and they've been, sort of patching holes on the defense pairs and in the bottom six for a while. There isn't a clear starting goalie, a real movement to try the younger guys there. So I was surprised just how well they rated out. But anytime you start Crosby, Malkin down the middle, and some of the sort of top guys they've got on the defense pairs, you're going to be competitive. But, just this short sample we have so far this season, goaltending is just submarining them. The team hasn't been bad, but you have to get a save. So, the early story for them is either Jerry or DeSmith has to really run with this, or they're going to need a solution if they want to do something like with the playoffs this season.
I'm glad you brought up goaltending because it's, and we talked to Jesse Marshall about this, where to me, goaltending is one of the hardest positions in not just hockey, but in sports to properly analyze. And when you watch a Penguins game, maybe when you're on Twitter, they get scored on, half the fan base is blaming the goalie, half the fan base is blaming the defense. It really depends on who's in net and what narrative is getting pushed that time. We've seen that with the last couple of goaltenders. Where are you at with the Pens goaltending and how we should judge them and how the Penguins are defensively as a team? Do you see it right now as they're just not getting average or above average goaltending, or would you be more on the side of it's also they're giving up too many high quality scoring chances? And how should maybe the casual fan or someone wanting to learn analytics go about trying to gauge where who to blame in that scenario?
Yeah. Okay. So those are all really good questions. The short answer is there's some blame to go around on both sides, the defense and the goalie so far. One chart that I like that I update daily is a comparison of the goalies in the league, their workload that they're facing. So how much shot quality has been being given up in front of them, and then their performance relative to that workload. So you can wind up with a goaltender who is performing well by sort of old school counting stats like goals against or save percentage, but they're not facing high quality shots. And so they rate out as an easy work, good results goaltender, but we can get hard work, good results, or hard work, poor results. So this scatter plot right now has Tristan Jarry at the very bottom in terms of results. He's giving up 4.5 goals per 60 minutes, more than we'd expect based on what the Penguins are giving up in front of him. So it's, it's horrendously bad. And goalies don't wind up outside of a goal and a half worse over a course of a season. He's 3 times that right now. So that, just a horrible, horrible start. But the Penguins are also giving up more expected goals against than league average right now while he's in the net. So it's a combination of a little bit of sort of defensive issues, some leaky defense, but it's mostly on Jarry right now. He's given up 9 goals going into today's game, 9 goals, and he's faced 3.5 expected goals. So, it's a really small sample, but you just can't start off that way. And it's something he's going to have to turn around if the Penguins want to go anywhere.
Yeah. So when we talked to Jesse, he said one of the things that we were going to notice this year was a different breakout for the Penguins and pretty much just a different all-around system. A lot more straight up and down, less passing. And the term that he used was low event hockey. And just watching the first 3 games and then so far watching this 4th game, I'm not seeing low event hockey. I'm seeing a lot of scoring. I'm seeing a lot of scoring chances. Like you said, the goalies are playing way below league average. Do you think that it's part of this is them still learning this system? You know, they really didn't have a normal training camp with COVID. So do you think that maybe just part of this is them trying to get comfortable right now with all the new changes?
Well, it could be that, but I think, the Penguins aren't in a different boat than anyone else there in terms of lack of preseason and changes to systems. So the first thought I have when you're poking sort of in that direction is, are we seeing an increase in pace around the league? Are we seeing teams giving up a lot of quality opportunities sort of league wide? Is it something that all teams are kind of getting used to new systems? And so we're seeing, maybe a little bit more leaky in terms of defense and a lot of shots. That hasn't been the case so far. League wide, the rate of quality chances right now is below what the average was last season. So we're getting about 2.1 expected goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. That should be around 2.3, maybe a little bit more than that. It's not a big difference, but it is lower right now. And so what we're seeing from teams is maybe the opposite, where because of uncertainty with the system, they're settling back into a shell. They're being more conservative as they're trying to figure out their moving pieces. For the Penguins, though, that hasn't been the case. They have the third highest rate of expected goals created. So they're really pushing the pace for themselves and getting those opportunities. And they're right on league average in terms of what they give up against. So they're in a good spot. They have a positive differential, but there's definitely nothing conservative about their style so far. They're pushing the pace fast themselves, and they're giving up about a league average rate against. Sort of maybe the touchstone there is I've got them wedged right in between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Toronto Maple Leafs, not teams that we're looking at as conservative hockey clubs. That's right where the Penguins are.
So before we go any further, because I've had this back and forth with my dad. I couldn't even tell you how many times. My dad is the classic old school hockey guy. Can you explain like the terminology that you're using? I don't know that a lot of our listeners are as familiar with it as guys like us are. So when you say like expected goals, how do you get that? Like how do you get that number, that expected goals or the against and for?
Yeah, so a number of the sort of key advanced stats websites that have come up have created different expected goal models. So you can go to evolvinghockey.com or moneypuck.com is the data I use most often. Natural Stat Trick has this as well. Even Hockey Reference has added it into their stats too. And so an expected goal is you take any shot that's happened, and then we figure out how likely is it that that shot was going to become a goal. And a number of factors can go into that. The biggest one is shot distance. The closer you are to the net, the more likely it is to become a goal. The further you are away, the less. Shot type goes into it. How long since the last recorded event? You kind of get a sense of, is this a rush play that's happening? Is the shot a rebound? What's the shot angle? And a number of other factors go into this. And what you wind up with is a number between 0 and 1 to give kind of a rating to that shot. So we might say, that shot had a 50% chance of going in. That was its expected goals number. And then we can take all those shots, weight them by how likely they were to become a goal, and then add them all up either for your team or against your team, what you're giving up. It aligns with shooting percentage, which makes sense. An average shot has about an 8% chance of going in. That's because the league average shooting is about 8% usually. So anything bigger than that is a really good shot. Anything less than that is probably a weak wrister from the point or something like that.
See, I really wanted you to explain that because a lot of the times when we have these, and I hate the arguments of like, oh, the old school, pugnacity or whatever it was, that conversation versus, the computer nerds, if I borrow a term from the Florida Panthers. Because a lot of people say, oh, well, these are just people who have never played the game. They don't understand it. It's their opinions. It's not really this or that. So to see the math and to see the actual data that goes into this, I think that that's an important thing for our listeners and for people approaching this conversation to see that this just isn't, Sean Tierney and Don Lecizen just throwing numbers at a screen and just punching stuff in from a keyboard. There's a lot of data and a lot of research that's going into this.
Yeah, for sure. And the Money Puck is the Money Puck model is the one I really like to use the most, just because the data is really easy to work with. But it's like the way that I've heard it said before is the eye test versus analytics war that went on. The eye test is one person's set of eyeballs watching hockey, And with analytics, you get everybody's eyeballs watching every shot. And so this isn't any different than watching hockey. It's just making sure that you don't miss anything and you try to have a clear standard of how you're going to rate the shots. And so I think, even the most old school hockey fan, if you see Cody Ceci fling a wrister from the right point, that's not a highly likely shot to go in. And all you're saying there is that's a low expected goals. And if you see Brian Rust hammering something away on the edge of the crease, that looks like something that might go in, and the expected goals number is higher. So it's really just trying to be, a little bit more precise, or keeping good records of all the eye tests that, we've always used to watch hockey.
Sean, how do you handle, because I'm in love with the analytics. I've used them since I was a blogger for, going about 8 years now. But there is a human element. We have to acknowledge that, right? The coach, anytime the Penguins, win a series, he's the greatest coach ever. When he loses a series, we need to fire Sullivan. Hockey coaches do have a short shelf life as well. So where do you factor in like a coach's impact on the team? And just watching the Penguins the last couple of years, are you starting to see maybe that shelf life starting to hit that expiration date with Sullivan? And because I am, and I'm a big Sullivan guy, but I know that in those hockey locker rooms, you can only say the same things so many times and hear the same things so many times, and eventually it kind of gets stale. So how does the you especially, but how does the analytic community handle that aspect, the human element of it as well?
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple good kind of questions there to tease apart. One is, how do you sort of measure the immeasurable things? And I think any responsible analytics person who's out there now, no one's denying that heart and leadership and messaging in the locker room, that those things aren't important. They are. In my former life, I was a teacher. And so a lot of it is that soft skills of being able to talk to people, talk to kids, and sometimes they listen to certain people and sometimes they don't listen to other people. So those soft skills are real, but you can't measure them in a meaningful way from the data we get from a hockey game. So we know that there's inputs like leadership, grit, heart, determination, and we know there's outputs, and we can measure the outputs. So if the inputs are really valuable, we should see them reflected in the on-ice effects eventually. So we'll measure the outputs and just say that, we're not capable of measuring someone's leadership ability, but if it's really real, we're going to see it come out in the outputs anyway. So we'll capture it there and acknowledge that we can't say a whole lot of definitive sort of things about Mike Sullivan in the room. That's one part. The other part I would say is, I think you're definitely right that anytime you're talking about leadership, and again, sort of thinking of my classroom experience, no kid wanted to be stuck with me for 3 or 4 or 5 years. My message had a shelf life. And I think it's the same in hockey, where especially a team like the Penguins that has a core that has been there for a while, the Crosby, Malkin, Letang component has been central here, but other pieces have been around several years now as well, too. I think that there is a shelf life. There's a 3, 4, 5 year. And in almost every case, it's better for everyone to embrace a new system, and players move into a different phase in their career. And it's easier if the message comes from someone new. It's very rare that a coach lasts 8, 9 years in any sport. And I think Mike Sullivan's a good coach, but he's been there quite a while and gone through some ups and downs too. And eventually you're going to see the end of that road come too, I think.
So if I'm going to analyze, I'm going to write this article right about Mike Sullivan, but I don't want to just go with the easy cliche narratives about what we just talked about. I want to also dissect his coaching abilities. Should we be looking at things like player usage, matchups, like how often Crosby played against the top line? Is that some things you look at as far as if a coach is getting the most out of his players?
Yeah, so there's two kinds of places you might find the coaching impact come out. And if there's a change in systems that the coach is responsible for, we'll see it in the big team level stats, like expected goal rate. Buffalo right now with Ralph Kruger is purposely playing a conservative style. They're trying to hang back and pick their opportunities. Or Barry Trotz with the Islanders is another example. They take high quality shots when they shoot, and they dare other teams to take low quality shots. We can see that in expected goal rates, that they're willing to give you all the shots you want from the outside, but they don't let you get into the house.
Right.
And that they only take shots themselves when they get in tight. So they get beat on that Corsi differential or that shot differential all the time, but they always win the expected goals battle. And that's because they're purposely setting up this system. So we can see the coach impact at this macro level, at the team level. The other place that you can see it show up is the micro stats. And I think of somebody like Corey Schneider. He's at Shutdown Line, who does hand tracking of data from hockey games like passing, zone exit, zone entries. You'll see coaching impact show up there too, like an old school coach that values dumping the puck in and chasing, like maybe a Columbus Blue Jackets, or a team that values carrying the puck in, like the Carolina Hurricanes. You'll see that reflected at the player level when a coach is saying, I want to control the blue line when we get across, or as soon as you hit the red line, dump that in. We'll see it in those micro stats for entries and exits and that kind of thing too.
So that's actually a great segue to the question. My next question. The last two questions Chad had, we didn't even plan that. But with coaching and, with all of these intangibles, the other big, wrench in the system this year is COVID-19 and the shortened season, only playing within your division, playing teams as much as we're going to this year. So, you're playing every team 8 times, 8 to 10 times, right? How does that affect everything that you do? So like when you're putting all of these charts together and you're putting these, kind of like the preseason, like, simulations, how do you factor in, okay, well, this isn't going to be as random because teams are going to be playing, is PDO going to be as much of a factor this year because there's so much of a familiarity between the teams?
Right. So there's 2 important parts there. And it's an issue that plagued me and anybody else trying to do this sort of thing in the summer. How do we evaluate a season that doesn't look like any other season? Even when we've had shortened seasons from lockouts in the past, it wasn't this same confined to your own division sort of scheduling. So we're seeing something completely unique. It's unprecedented. The other thing to boot is I've been following other leagues really closely since we haven't had much hockey for months and months, and home field, home court, home ice advantage is gone in almost every case. And so we know in hockey, you can take a home team and boost their win percentage by 5% just off the bat because they're home. And that's gone in other sports right now. So there's a number of unprecedented changes that you just sort of have to be humble about and put your hands up and say, we're not going to know until we know. But one part that we can say is the PDO aspect. It takes 20, 25 games before that settles down for teams. Everybody regresses to average. So if you're shooting great, you're shooting poorly, lots of saves, lack of saves, everybody collapses to the middle over time. It's really hard to stay far out from the average lines at the team level. But if you reduce the season by 25 games, that gives more opportunity for an outlier to stay an outlier and never get back to average. So it's actually, I think, an interesting reverse of what you were touching on, where I think the impact, right, the impact of PDO this year will be greater. And the last time we had a lockout shortened season, so something comparable, the PDO range was the widest it's been in the entire advanced stats era from 2008 to now. So that's what I anticipate now, which means some random team is about to go on a bender, shoot the lights out, and they won't have time to regress, or some team will get no saves all season long. Hopefully it's not the Penguins. And it never has time to correct. So I think that PDO aspect, there's no way to program for that. It doesn't repeat year over year. It's not a skill that teams have. It's just puck luck. And some teams are going to suffer from it, probably extra, I think.
Man, that is the complete opposite of what I thought you were going to say. That's crazy.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Sean, why did the Penguins trade for Mike Matheson and Cody Ceci? That's my question to you. No, seriously, they've already been scratched. Matheson, I was kind of intrigued about because he does have skating ability and some offensive ability. But it's been tracked for. It's not like this guy's a super young player. He's been in the league for a while now, and defensively, we know that he has some definitely. He's just not good defensively. Let's just put it that way. And Cody Ceci is what he is. Now they've already scratched him, and they're playing Ricola and Ruido, which is weird because that's literally all Penguins Twitter did last year was beg Mike Sullivan to play them over Jack Johnson and Justin Schultz. And yet now we're 3 games in the season, and he's doing just that to these 2 new guys. Is Rutherford and Sullivan just not on the same page? And what did you think about them acquiring those guys?
Yeah. So anytime you're moving Jack Johnson out, you're looking at improvement. So it wasn't like they weren't going to get a little bit better. Jack Johnson's isolated impact over the past few years has been as bad as it can be. So, when you're starting with that baseline, I guess maybe grass looks greener on a lot of sides. Mike Matheson, that one I couldn't figure out. His defensive impacts have consistently been pretty negative. And then, purposely acquiring him in that trade, it seemed like there was story there. And without being an embedded Pittsburgh person, just sort of evaluating the league on the whole, I didn't feel like I ever understood exactly what was happening there to target him and bring him in. But certainly not more than a 6th or 7th defenseman, and that's what's happened to him already. The Cody Ceci story is really strange, and I'm close to the Toronto Maple Leafs market and the Ottawa Senators market, kind of right, whatever, in between. And so I've seen the highs and lows of the Cody Ceci story. And the very strange thing about him is he's a tremendous skater, and that's always going to win you fans. He really looks like a hockey player for, whatever that's worth. He can really skate, and he played for very poor Ottawa Senators teams for years. And so there was a lot of reason to suspect that he wasn't a high quality defender. But with the Leafs last year, he was pretty good. His impacts on expected goal rates were positive. He actually had a good season, and it was really difficult to reconcile. It's sort of like how Rasmus Ristolainen with the Sabres right now is on one of the best defense pairings going through 3 games. It's like, it's just flipping analytics on its head. But Cody Ceci had a good year last year. He was okay on a run and gun Leafs team where they valued somebody who could keep up with the flow because he can really skate. And so that one, if I'm picking one of the 2 to be more defensible, it's maybe the Ceci one, because last year's data on him wasn't too bad. And he can keep up with the kind of pace that some of the Penguins forwards will move at. But I mean, again, you're still looking at someone who ultimately, if he's more than your 5th or 6th defenseman, you're in trouble. You're asking too much. And so to purposely acquire a veteran bottom pair with no upside and then wind up scratching them a couple games in, it's a bit of a red flag that I think you're right. Maybe there's some disagreement from top to coaching on how this roster should be constructed.
Is that Matheson contract? Is that, in your eyes, one of the worst values in the league right now?
Yeah, there wouldn't be many that would be as untradeable. And again, I don't know if it was acquired on purpose or if the player moving out was being moved out on purpose or what exactly was going on there. But it's the kind of contract that looks like it's a buyout just waiting to happen, not far down the road. And I don't know, maybe it's one of those intangible good in the room kind of things, but there's no data to back up playing him. Although before we move off of him, he's got 30 minutes of time on ice this season, and he's been very positive. He's at 52% expected goal share. So his little bit of data this year has actually been okay.
Is he a future Seattle Kraken?
Only if they're willing to part with some draft picks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they gave them they gave Vegas a 2nd round pick to take Fleury.
Yeah.
Which was still, to me, is still a head scratcher. I mean, I thought that was the logical choice for Vegas without the 2nd round pick. And
Vegas was working some sort of magic as they went through, because the Penguins weren't the only team that found themselves without assets and without a player and wondering why they did any of that. But Fleury was a strange one, just especially because of the sentimental tie to the city. This wasn't just a player that you move along. Like if a Mike Matheson winds up with the Kraken next year, that's not a sad story probably in Penguins land, but the Fleury thing always, even from afar, looked like a sad ending to somebody who was so pivotal.
I cried at that Vegas
Yeah.
Knights game when he
Yeah.
like his return when they did the when they gave him his standing ovation and everything. That was, I mean, he was my favorite. Like, you got to remember, I'm 31, so when the Penguins stunk, that Generation X Penguins team in the early 2000s,
Mhm.
late 90s, early 2000s, that was the only thing I knew. I mean, I was barely old enough to catch the tail end of Lemieux's career.
Right.
So I didn't see good Penguins hockey. And when they drafted Fleury, he had those bright yellow pads. I always wanted to be a goalie growing up. Chad can tell you a story about deck hockey, about how that's never going to be a thing. But no, that was my guy. That was when hockey got real for me again. And so when he left, it was, I mean, I knew it was coming. I had the whole, I had pretty much had the whole off season to brace myself for it. But yeah, when he came back, man, that was an emotional day for a lot of people in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I think that's Fleury's one of those people who ascended to a level that beyond just the local market, everybody recognized how synonymous he was with Penguins hockey over that generation. So again, it's sad that it happened, but it's especially strange that it took an asset to get it done too.
Yeah.
And that, again, just there's things that sometimes we don't have a window into in front offices, and that's one where I felt like I didn't understand precisely what was up there either. And Fleury's got one good game under his belt with Vegas so far this year, so hopefully he's got one more good season left in him out there.
For sure.
Last one from me, Sean. So when Jim Rutherford is your team's general manager, the trade deadline does not. It's always trade deadline day here in Pittsburgh because he makes trades. He likes doing it, and in a lot of times when he has a guy, he gets tunnel vision and he wants to go after that guy. And I'm looking at article after article about him being interested in Jack Roslovic from the Jets. And it says that Rutherford the Penguins are the team favorite to get him. Possibly giving up some draft picks, surprise there, and possibly a defenseman in return. Thoughts on that and how he would fit the team?
Well, it's not. Roslovic is a decent, not great player. Ultimately, he's a part of a middle six as a complementary scoring option. Like Laine right now is sitting out and upset because Winnipeg is pretty deep at the top of their forward group and he can't get the ice time he wants, and that makes sense. Roslovic isn't the same caliber at all. And so to me, it's sort of, I guess the comparable in terms of what you might expect is something like a Kapanen type of player, a little bit more skilled. Kapanen tends to fly up and down the wing, and his shot isn't something really super reliable. He's more of a breakaway artist than anything else. Whereas Roslovic has got a little bit of like a Kyle Connor Jr., where his shot does have is a plus overall, and he can snipe a little bit, but it's not the Penguins' major need right now. The wings for the Penguins roster are good. There's plenty of scoring options up and down, and the Penguins have one of the rare bottom sixes where it's not one that I'm super from afar tempted to tinker with. I like the roles that those players are asked to play, and I think they suit those roles. Ultimately, where's Roslovic fitting into this roster? He's not moving Zucker. Russ shouldn't move Kapanen's top six, or at least the way they paid for him. So, and then Russ, you're not looking at a whole lot of space to work this guy in. If I'm the Penguins, the number one priority is I'd be pretty nervous about what I've done in net, and I would be looking to see, is there a veteran, somebody in their 30s, somebody whose contract isn't too bad, and you compare them with Jari and try to run there and maybe mix DeSmith in if he makes a challenge for it. Net is clearly the need, and a top four defenseman like every team every year. But the last thing the Penguins need to do is collect another middle six scoring forward, and that's all Roslovic is. So I hope for your sake that's not what he winds up doing, but knowing the way Rutherford works, he'll bring him in and move Rust out and move Kapanen out and bring somebody else in, and the team will look completely different by the deadline anyway.
I remember our podcast back in August. We had Jesse Marshall and Josh Yohe back-to-back weeks, and I asked both of them. I said, are you guys not extremely nervous about going into this season, trying to compete for a cup? That's always the goal with Tristan Jarry, and Casey DeSmith. You're throwing all your eggs in that basket. And there were so many affordable veteran backup goaltenders out there that were honestly quality. And you could probably still get one for cheap. So, yeah, I'm with you on that because I don't think they have what I would consider championship caliber goaltending at all.
No, and goaltending is it's the most difficult to project position year over year. Goalies that do very well one year will drop off inexplicably year over year. Like Frederik Andersen's an interesting case where he's routinely been in top 5 in goals saved above expectation. Last year he cratered out, and this year I anticipate he'll bounce back. Connor Hellebuck he looks like the best goalie in the league. He's posted 2 seasons of league leading goals saved above expectation and 2 seasons where he's been below expectation, so a below average goaltender, and he rifles up and down between these 2 positions. If you get into the business of predicting goalies, you're in for heartbreak. It's just the way it goes. However, I wouldn't feel good about getting into a situation where the goalies that I have time in the league and haven't shown high ceilings. And when you're looking at these 2, you're talking about a couple of goalies who Jari's 25, DeSmith's already 29. These aren't goalies that are going to flash some level that we haven't seen yet. You're looking at 2 goalies that you'd be happy with as your backup and 0 goalies you'd be happy with as a starter. So I think ultimately that market for somebody who could take over the crease, that's where the Penguins should be kind of focused, especially because you're looking at a possible week or 2-week quarantine. If you get somebody, you're missing maybe 8 games all of a sudden between acquiring somebody and having them start for you. So it's the kind of search I'd be on right now if I was in Rutherford's share, but I don't know who's out there yet either.
Yeah. My last question for you is not a Penguins question. It's more of a broader hockey question. Getting ready for the conversation with you today, I was listening to the pregame, and Bob Erie, I think 3 times referenced Zdeno Chara and how he's been a plus. He leads the Capitals in plus minus, and he's been a plus 100 over the last so many years. If you were able to wave a magic wand and get rid of one stat from hockey, from the hockey vernacular or the hockey culture, what would it be and why?
Okay, well, do you have another hour for us to talk?
Well, listen, the Penguins have scored 2 goals since we started talking, so talk all you want.
Going. I've got that magic touch over here. Yeah, I mean, plus minus has been pretty roundly debunked. Anytime you get stuck on ice goals as a metric that you're using, goals just happen so rarely in this sport that you're in for misleading arguments, which is why plus minus is something we moved away from, and look at all the shots that happen instead of the goals, because the goal part is sadly a little bit random. My pet peeve now, or the one that comes up way more than it deserves, is face-offs. They had a long talk on Sportsnet the other night about how valuable it was to have Jason Spezza for the Leafs in the face-off, winning all his face-offs. There's really, the data shows that you need to be up several hundred face-off wins over your losses to contribute a goal over the course of a season. So it really is it's a glorified puck battle. It's one of the rare times in hockey where everything stops and we focus, and it kind of looks like the old West, and you've got 2 guys sort of wander out at high noon to draw their pistols. And so I see how the spotlight is wound up extra focused on it, but it isn't special. It's just another battle. It's no better than somebody who goes into the corner and routinely comes out with the puck. It's just another puck battle, and it really takes a ton of wins above your losses before it amounts to anything valuable. So face-offs would be my one if I was going to take another one out. Hits is another one that I would be looking at, just because you're on the wrong side of the puck when you're hitting. So if you hit somebody but you get the puck, great. If you hit somebody and then they skate away from you laughing, like, those are different kinds of situations. But I could go on and on and on. I won't do that to you on this podcast.
That was my dad and I. My dad, for whatever reason, loved Jack Johnson. And that was always the argument. He leads the team in hits, and we need that. Like that, he leads the team in hits because he never has the puck. That's the whole reason.
Yeah, well, that's for me and my dad. That was he's sort of slowly coming over the analytics side, but he's an old guy hockey fan too.
Oh.
And when I could tell him, you know that they only have a hit because they didn't have the puck, I could see the light come on one day when he went, oh, good point. And ever since then, we've been able to have conversations that are a little bit better.
I'll even add, I think block shots is honestly extremely overrated too. I mean, there is some good that you can do with blocking shots, but if you're constantly blocking shots, again, it's like, well, why are you always in the defensive zone the whole game? So
yeah, exactly. And it's something where, like, if analytics is anything, it's just searching for context to try to figure out how much things are worth. And a block shot on a penalty kill when you break up the play they're running, great. And if it's 5-on-5 and you're laying out all the time because you never have the puck, that's different. So
yeah,
it's just kind of being able to separate things and be a little bit fair about how we judge them.
Well, Sean, we really can't tell you thank you enough, man, for coming on today. I love this hockey talk. Anytime we can really get into the nitty-gritty of the game, this is Chad and I's favorite sport. And
yes.
So anytime we got somebody that knows the game the way that you do, you know the ins and outs of it, you know the stats, I mean, you're just a wealth of knowledge. And if you're not following Sean on Twitter, and if you don't know about his website, chartinghockey.ca, he has a Patreon as well. You've got to check that all out, because if you are at all a hockey fan, you will learn so much from following him and checking his workout. Sean, thank you so much for coming on the show with us.
Thanks for making time for me, guys. It was a pleasure. Hope I can come back soon.
Thanks, Sean.
All right. All right, we're back, and again, this is the 412 Sports Talk podcast, brought to you, as always, by MCM Studios. We want to thank Sean Tierney again for coming on. That was an awesome conversation with him. Just a great hockey talk again, and we know we just said all of that at the end of the interview, but if you want to follow him, you can follow him at Charting Hockey. You can find him at chartinghockey.ca, and then he also has a Patreon, which is just, again, Charting Hockey. Check all of his stuff out. He's a great follow. He's a great dude. So Chad, we weren't even going to do a third segment, but the first segment went so long that we got so much into that first segment that we forgot. You wanted to talk a little bit about the way I put it, the whiniest, one of the biggest babies in history left his job today, and it wasn't Donald Trump. It was Philip Rivers. So you want to talk a little bit about Philip Rivers retiring. So I'll let you have the floor.
Well, no. So there's just a lot of hot takes. I know that it's popular to hate Ben Roethlisberger, especially right at the moment where he just threw 4 interceptions in a playoff loss. I tried listening to 93.7 The Fan, and they just don't like Ben. They don't even try to hide it. What's his name? Mueller or whatever his name is. I mean, he just comes out and says, I hate Ben. So why should I even care what your opinion is, right? But so Philip Rivers retired today, and I don't see the love he gets. I don't really get it. Everybody's saying, oh, he's a slam dunk Hall of Famer. Now someone's saying that Andrew Filipponi said, I just had a player text me that if Rivers was on the Steelers and Ben was on the Chargers, the rings would be reversed. Okay, what do we have as evidence to support that? Because let's take a look at some of the team. Are we trying to say that Philip Rivers was never on good football teams? Is that what we're trying to say? Because if it is,
if I remember correctly, didn't he spend like half of his career with LaDainian Tomlinson?
Right. So in 2006, the Chargers went 14-2.
Antonio Gates.
Rivers completed barely 61% of his passes for less than 4,000 yards, 22 touchdowns, 9 picks. Okay, so like he was like a game manager, right? I think if Ben had those stats during that era, he'd be called a good game manager. That year, that was the year that LT broke the record for touchdowns in a season. So it's weird because Ben gets this. This is how narratives work, because the narrative is that Ben won a Super Bowl handing the ball off and having a good defense. But if you go back and watch the 2005 playoffs, it was the complete opposite. It was the Ben Roethlisberger show. If the NFL had the Conn Smythe like hockey does, even with his terrible performance against the Seahawks, Ben Roethlisberger was the MVP of that postseason.
No, I remember especially the Colts game and the Broncos game. I remember watching with my dad and seeing. We would always joke about how they'd run the ball, and then pass on third down.
Right.
But then in the first quarters of those two games, they opened it up, and I remember they jumped out the big leads in both of those games. And I remember Ben just tossing it around and like seeing the offense open up for the first time in forever. I was like, look at this. This is insane. This is great.
Heading into the Super Bowl, Roethlisberger had 8 touchdowns total. He had 7 passing and 1 rushing and 1 turnover in 3 road playoff games. That's why they got to the Super Bowl.
Wow.
Now they might have gotten to the
impressive.
They might have gotten to the Super Bowl if he had lesser stats because the defense was good, but they rode his arm to the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. And they did have a good running game. They had Jerome Bettis and Willie Parker, but still
they didn't have LaDainian Tomlinson.
No, they didn't have LaDainian Tomlinson, and to your point, those stats through those games for a second-year quarterback and how accurate and how efficient he was, too. That's the other thing, how efficient and accurate he was that year.
Philip Rivers had a top 5 running game 6 seasons in the Chargers, and he had a top 5 defense 4 times and a top 3 defense in both yards and scoring 3 times. Okay, in 2009, the Chargers had the number 1 defense ranked in the league in yards allowed. They didn't make the playoffs. They did not make the playoffs with the number 1 defense in the league with Philip Rivers. Okay, so that debunks that right there. Then we go with the thing that, Ben won with these great running games and all these great players. Okay, in Super Bowl 43, that year, the Steelers no doubt had one of the best probably one of the 5 best defenses in the last 20 years. No doubt about that. But guess who won the game? Ben Roethlisberger, who was literally scrambling for his life behind one of the worst offense. Go watch the game-winning drive again. He literally dodges sack after sack after sack.
The first play of the drive.
Yeah. And the second play after that, you can watch him. He literally does a little Houdini underneath sack and then does a pump fake to Hall. He was pump faking everywhere. Listen. I have 0 evidence to show after watching Philip Rivers play an entire career of making it his business to throw an interception late in the game that Philip Rivers would have went down and won that game. I would have bet $100 flat that day that he would have thrown an interception, let alone just get killed behind one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen win a Super Bowl. I think Philip Rivers is a good good quarterback. But this whole that narrative, for one thing, the reason why people say stuff like that is because you have no way of really proving them wrong. I can sit here and list all this stuff, and then they're going to come back with other stats, and we have no way of taking Philip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger and switching them teams. But yeah, do I think Ben Roethlisberger would have still had a Hall of Fame career playing with LaDainian Tomlinson and Antonio Gates? Absolutely. And the Chargers had a better offensive line overall. So I don't see where that argument comes from. I think they're both better quarterbacks than Eli Manning. If I'm ranking them 1 through 3, Eli's 3rd. I know he won those 2 Super Bowls. I don't judge quarterbacks based on Super Bowls, despite what I just said. I think the argument was that Rivers would have the rings if he was with the Steelers. I don't believe that. Based off of what I've watched Philip Rivers do in his career.
I agree with you. I think that Philip Rivers is a borderline Hall of Famer, but Ben Roethlisberger is in my mind, a first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't think that it's, I don't think you can compare the two. I think that Ben showed up in big time moments way more than Philip Rivers did. Just look at how many fourth quarter game-winning drives they have. I don't know off the top of my head, but I can guarantee you that Ben has more than Philip Rivers. And so for me, it's one of those things where Philip Rivers was a competitor. He was on some really good football teams, but he never even made it to the Super Bowl. And I know you just said you don't judge quarterbacks off of Super Bowls and Super Bowl appearances, but I do think there's something to be said for in a conference where you had Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, and Phillip Rivers were the 4 quarterbacks of the AFC, for basically this era. And Phillip Rivers never even made it to a Super Bowl. The other 3 did. Phillip Rivers didn't even make it once. Okay, the other 3 each have at least 2 Super Bowl rings.
And
Phillip
3
Rivers,
or more appearances.
Right,
yeah.
and 3 or more appearances. And Phillip Rivers didn't do it one time. So for me, that actually does say a little bit about who he was. When it came to playing against his contemporaries, his peers, he didn't show up, and they did. Look at his record against Brady, Roethlisberger, and Manning, and then that pretty much tells you the story.
And then, so here we go. So here's one last narrative to end this. Okay, it's that Ben, this narrative that Ben is a turnover machine, right? But okay, here we go. Phillip Rivers has led the league in interceptions twice, Ben once. Okay, seasons with interceptions, 18 or more interceptions in a season, 18, which is more than 1 a game. Phillip Rivers has thrown 18 or more interceptions 4 times in his career. Ben, twice. I mean, I don't know where narratives come from. It's just that's how powerful media is for like just one guy like a Michael Irvin or whoever that like they don't like Ben. They say this one thing and then it's a ripple effect. It's a ripple effect going forward. Rivers is literally notorious for throwing ill-advised, bad timing interceptions. And Roethlisberger, up until probably the last 3 years, was known for, hey, if the ball is in his hand with 2 minutes to go, we got a chance. That was literally what Ben Roethlisberger was known for. He has more game-winning drives. He has more fourth quarter comebacks than Phillip Rivers. So where are these narratives coming from? One is clutch and one is not.
I could flip that script and say, what if you gave Ben Roethlisberger a big receiver like Keenan Allen? What if you gave him a big tight end like Antonio Gates?
What if you gave him LaDainian Tomlinson?
Yeah, what if you gave him LaDainian Tomlinson? Like, I could flip that script so easily. And I'm not saying that Ben didn't have talent around him, because he is absolutely had talent around him. But to say that, to say the things that people were saying when, just for no reason comparing Phillip Rivers to Ben Roethlisberger too. The dude retired. Enjoy the career for what it was. He was a great, I think he was a great quarterback. Again, I don't know that he was a Hall of Fame quarterback.
So so you're on the Hall of Fame board.
I'm borderline.
Take your Steelers glasses off. His name comes up. What are you saying?
Phillip Rivers?
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I will say yes, but barely.
Okay. And then that's part 2. Eli Manning, his name's in there. Rivers in there. The same year, you can only vote for one to get in.
Rivers or Manning?
Yeah.
Well, that's tough.
The problem I have with Eli is when you go look at Eli's stats, they are not good.
No, and then his record.
And
he's got the 2 Super Bowl wins.
I'm on Pro Football Reference right now, and you can compare 2 players per game. And Rivers and Ben's stats, I mean, it's like 0.3 here, 0.4 here, touchdowns, interceptions, yards per game. They're so close. Eli's not even near those guys.
Yeah.
So then do those 2 rings overthrow that?
No. I would say Eli, no. Rivers, barely yes. Ben, absolutely yes. And here's my reasoning for that. I think that in the Hall of Fame, stats should matter more than Super Bowls, personally.
Great.
And so somebody like Dan Marino, who doesn't have a Super Bowl win, should not be penalized for that, because he was still one of the greatest, maybe the greatest quarterback of all time as far as pure talent goes.
Here's who Eli Manning is of his generation. He's Troy Aikman, because Troy Aikman, to me, is the most overrated quarterback of all time.
Interesting.
Troy Aikman, if you go on Pro Football Reference, right, he had 4 seasons, where he had more interceptions than touchdowns. He only made the Pro Bowl 3 times. He never led the league in yards, touchdowns. Roethlisberger and Roethlisberger's led the league in passing twice. He tied with Drew Brees the one year. He's thrown over 30 touchdowns multiple times. Troy Aikman, I was going through the stats. He never finished top 3 in touchdowns in a single season. Most overrated player I've ever seen. He just happened to be the game manager on one of the greatest assembled teams of all time. If you put Jim Kelly or Dan Marino on the Cowboys, they probably win more than 3 rings.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And so where I was going with the Dan Marino thing is, so Dan Marino doesn't have a Super Bowl, but everybody agrees as far as talent goes, and then as far as statistics goes, he's maybe the greatest of all time, if not one of the top 2 or 3. Now, so for me, Ben Roethlisberger and Phillip Rivers get in on stats alone. Again, it would be, if you took Ben's 2 Super Bowls away, it would be a little bit closer. But on stats alone, Ben Roethlisberger and Phillip Rivers, I think they both get in. Where it goes completely over to the top for me is when there's a tie in stats, then you look at what their teams did. And Ben Roethlisberger was in the Super Bowl 3 times, and he won it twice. And again, that second Super Bowl that they won was absolutely on his arm. They don't win that game if he doesn't make that drive, if he doesn't orchestrate that drive against Arizona. So for me, it's a no-brainer for Ben because he has the Super Bowls and the stats. Phillip Rivers, it's a barely yes because of the stats. Eli, I don't think he gets in my book just because, okay, yeah, he was on 2 teams that won Super Bowls, but it wasn't because of Eli. It wasn't like they were – those teams did not win because Eli was that good. Those teams won because they got hot. So for me, Eli is a no. Phillip Rivers is a barely yes. Roethlisberger's a shoo-in. Maybe that makes me sound like a Yinzer and a homer. I don't really care. That's just where I look at it. That's where I fall on it.
I ranked them Ben, Rivers, Eli. Yeah. And I think Ben's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think Rivers is a guy that you'd probably make wait like 3 or 4 years because I think he's like right on the border. I would never put Eli in. It's crazy that like basically 2 postseasons are going to get him in because if you look at the rest of his career, he was extremely mediocre.
You know who another one that Eli reminds me of? It's funny. It's another Giants quarterback is Phil Simms.
Phil Simms, yeah, absolutely.
Phil Simms he's a Super Bowl champ, but just didn't have the stats to back it up. He was a good quarterback. I mean, he's a long-time starter. Was not a bad quarterback. Definitely wasn't a detriment to his team, but I don't think he ever did anything to warrant being a Hall of Famer, even though he won a Super Bowl. And I see Eli as the exact same kind of player. Wasn't a detriment to his team, wasn't bad, was a long-time starter, was solid, you knew what you were going to get out of him, but he was never the type of player that was going to put your team on his shoulders and just say, ride me to the Super Bowl, where Peyton Manning did that. Tom Brady did that. Ben Roethlisberger did that. Drew Brees did that. Aaron Rodgers did that. All of his contemporaries that we call Hall of Famers could have done that. We didn't see Eli do that. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with it. But hats off to Phillip Rivers on a great career, even though I don't like you. You were a good quarterback, good competitor. Like I said, borderline Hall of Famer. So, congratulations on a good career and enjoy retirement. Maybe now you'll finally have some time to have a couple kids and settle down.
Absolutely. I have nothing to add to that other than Penn Chronicles sucks.
Yeah, there you go. So we'll start where we'll finish off where we started off. Penn's Chronicles sucks. Guys, thank you again for listening. We know this was a little bit longer of an episode this week, an extra segment. Just a lot going on, though, a lot to talk about, and that's never a bad thing. So for Mad Chad Nolan, I'm Eddie Provident. We appreciate you tuning in and listening this week. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Thanks for listening to 412 Sports Talk. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. If you like the show, leave us a review, and be sure to tell a friend about your source for all things Pittsburgh sports. Find us on Twitter at MadChad412 and at Eddie_P_412.